The following presentation was recorded live for the International Association of Square Dance Callers 33rd Annual Convention. We take you live to the Renaissance Suites Hotel in Charlotte, North Carolina, where our session is just getting underway.
Okay, everybody please take a chair. If you didn't get a handout, we still have some chairs down front. I'm sorry, Keith, I thought I was going to use that chair, but don't need it anymore. This session is recorded, and it's called CRaMS, Control, Resolution, and Manipulation System, developed by Jerry Story. Our panelists this morning are Deborah Carroll-Jones, Randy Dougherty, Jerry Story, and me. My name is, happy birthday to me, John Jones. There are papers that we have put in the back that will help you along the way, more so later than maybe today. So you don't have to be thumbing through and looking at them as we go unless each speaker would ask you to, then that will make a difference. Back in 1999, Tony Oxendine, Jerry Story, and I started the Lone Star Callers College down in Texas. And during the first year of that school, Jerry came and asked if he could present his system of calling to the new callers. And we said yes. After he was into it for a few minutes, Tony and I had no idea what he was talking about, so we left. He went ahead with his session, and the following year the same thing happened. He asked if he could present it again, and we said yes. He got into it again, and after about 30 minutes, we still didn't understand what he was talking about, so we left the room. I later began to think about it, and I could well imagine what the caller students were wondering, because we didn't think they understood it either. But they never did let Jerry know. They made him think they understood what he was talking about. The third year, on the way to the school, Jerry and I were riding together, and he began to talk about it again. And I told him, I said, Jerry, I'm not interested. I have no desire to want to learn anything new. I've been at this game too long, and I learned a sight call from Les Gocher in 1957, and I don't need anything else. I've been quite successful at doing what I'm doing, so I don't need to clutter my brain up trying to learn anything else. He doesn't give up. He said, let me ask you one question. He said, when you're sight calling, can you see before you ever get to it that you can do a pass-through and a trade-by to an alley-man left? And I said, yeah, I see that all the time. He said, before the pass-through, if you were to do a slide-through, you'd have a right-hand lady line in sequence. And a big light turned on to me when he said that. I immediately realized that we sight callers have totally forgotten about and eliminated anything to do with the right-hand lady, because we can't find her. We have no idea where she is. Most sight callers, all sight callers, can see partner pairing and you can see corner pairing. Many can see opposite lady pairing. But in most situations, you ask a sight caller to find a right-hand lady, and they won't have any idea where she is. I have tested it many times in caller school, so I know what I'm talking about in that regard. We'd flash a card to these really very good sight callers, set up a right-hand lady line, and they have no idea where it was. So we began to think about it and discuss it, and it turned on a whole new thing for me. So then that year, I sat in on the entire session of what Jerry was talking about, and I began to understand more of what he was saying. Some of the language that he was using was over everybody's head. But the more we kept talking about it, the more we began to refine it. So I told him, I said, you got to write it down. I said, have you ever written any of this down? He said, yeah, I've got a paper on it. He was calling it then sight resolution on the fly. Well, I read the paper and I didn't understand it. So we got on the telephone and we talked back and forth many hours discussing it. And I said, you've got to put it in a language that the average caller can understand. And I said, I've been around for a long time, and I think I can understand a lot, but I do not understand what you're talking about. So we kept working on it, refining it, working together with it, and he and Deborah together finally got it in a situation to where we could all understand it, or most of us could. And he and Deborah came up with the name of Controlled Resolution and Manipulation System. I had always wondered for many, many years how Jerry had total control of his calling, total control of the floor. I'm sure he has at times, but I've never seen him miss a corner. I've never seen him miss a partner in all of his patter calling, in many weekends and week-long situations of calling with him. So I said, we got to figure out what he's doing. He's so successful with it. I heard him make a comment when he and Randy and Tony and Tim Mariner, you guys were all in Japan calling over there, and somebody asked Jerry, are you having a hard time sight calling, keeping up with these people? If you've never called in Japan, and I'm not putting the Japanese down at all, but when you first walk in to start calling for them, they really do all look alike to start with. And if they're dressed in a club costume, forget it, dude. And the first things I ever called in Japan was to all women. At the end of the first tip, I had some of them figured out of who they were paired with. The next tip, they changed partners and swapped sides. I had to start all over. You talking about reverting back to memory? It eats a sight caller's lunch. I guarantee you to do something like that. And later on, there was 4 men showed up, and then they danced in front of me the rest of the evening. And I asked them, why did you not tell me that this was going to be an all-female dance? And they said, we were afraid you wouldn't come call for us if we told you in advance. And they may have been right, because, God, I hadn't used my memory bank like that in 25 years. And it was difficult to go back to. Somebody asked Jerry, said, are you having a hard time keeping up with these dancers while you're sight calling? He said, I'm not sight calling. And nobody knew what he was talking about or what he was using. What method was he using? So we kept working on it. We felt like we needed somebody to look at this thing. So we started putting papers together. Bill Peters found out about it on the web some way or internet some way, and he called me and he said, what is this thing you guys are talking about in your caller school? And I said, Bill, Deborah and I are going to be over there in a couple of weeks, and it's a whole lot easier to explain it to you in person than it is on paper. So Deborah and I went to Hawaii, and we spent a week with Bill and Betty, and I explained to him what we were doing and what we were talking about. And he said it's almost exactly the same system of calling that he used before he got involved in sight calling. Very similar. And he was thrilled to death to see that something like this was coming out. So as we were writing papers and putting it together, we sent them to Bill constantly, and he was reviewing everything that we did. And he said, just a short synopsis, he studied CRaMS very thoroughly and said it was probably the best system available today. That's a pretty good stamp of approval on what we were doing. So, and also at the CALLERLAB convention in 2004, the Accredited Caller Coach Committee passed a resolution among ourselves that we have spent too much time and too long teaching callers to sight call. We've wasted too much time in doing that and put too much emphasis on it. So we're backing off of that. We have trained too many callers to not know what they're doing and not having any control over what they're doing. So we're backing off of it. We've applied the study of CRaMS. We've worked on it very hard. Jerry and Deborah have done a really good job of putting it together and developing papers for it. And 1 week shy of my 70th birthday, which is back in December, it was really fun to call an entire dance using the entire CRaMS system or nothing but. I got off my sight calling. Like I said, I learned to sight call in 1957. It was very difficult for me to learn something new, but it took me a while to finally figure out what it was. It is really fun to do, and it's really neat to do. Now I switch back and forth. I'll switch to sight, and I'll immediately go back to one of the CRaMS stations, and I know I've got total control of the floor. I don't have to guess. I still look. I still have pilot squares. But when I know where I am, I don't care whether they resolve or not, because I know where I am. With my calling, I can resolve the rest of the floor without any problem at all. So you can teach old dogs new tricks. I found that out. I learned that. If you want a whole lot more information, then you can go to Jerry's website, and he can show you that. We got a square dancers. I want you on the floor, please, right now. We got some of the best dancers in the world. Now, I'm talking about squaring up today. If you got to figure out what your number is, we're in deep trouble. Don't make fun of the pennies. You'll be wearing it next. It's a 2. That's a Texas 2, whether you like it or not. Yeah. Just dance it. Now, if you don't learn anything else, learn this. Heads lead left, veer right, boys trade, couples circulate. Now, what I did was uncirculate. Just a minute, let me back up. What I have done, as far as I'm concerned, in my mind, I know where I am. I'm the number one man, and I know where I am. And I went over there, and I've got his girl, and he's got mine. That's all I need to know. Couples circulate. I know I've still got his girl, and he's got mine. But we got away from each other with that, didn't we? Separated. Got over in another world. Bend the line. Pass through. Boys trade. Courtesy turn. Guess what? Now, I ain't going to do alley man left. That's too simple. But I know that I've got a what? 0 line. That's in my mind. There's no problem with that. I know exactly where I am at this point, right? So we know we can do an alley man left. Go back and square your set. I got to thinking about it. Heads step to the center. Turn and face your corner. Step to an ocean way. And where in the world is the right-hand lady? Off over yonder somewhere. If I've got my corner by the hand, who's in the opposite position from the corner? The right-hand lady. Can't be anybody else in symmetric choreography. It don't make any difference what you do. All 8 circulate. Guess what? I got her by the hand. If I don't turn her loose, she can't get away from me in any regard. Swing through. Oh, God, I lost her. Boys trade. I got her back. Boys run. Bend the line. All I got to do is resolve. Long time ago, square through 4. Long time ago, give a right to your partner, pull by. Alley man left. That was way before trade by. Come back and promenade. That was the primary first grade get out of that situation. But I wanted to resolve by starting with the right-hand lady, and I wanted to resolve at home. So I figured out that I got to get myself in the position where the right-hand lady is over, in that area, not necessarily that exact footprint, but in that area, to do my resolution that I wanted. Does everybody know that if you have a 0 line and you touch a quarter and all 8 circulate and the boys run, you got a what? A 0 box, right? So what you have done is rotated from one person to the next in the corner slot position. So all I got to do is get my right-hand lady where I want her. 2 and 4 right and left through. And the side ladies chain. And the heads lead right. And I've got everybody facing right-hand lady, and I know that because I moved the number 4 man over on the other side, and then I took my partner to him, and I know he's looking at his right-hand lady. And I know that I'm looking at mine because I put her over there. That's where I wanted her. Slide through. And I know I'm in a line with my right-hand lady. Everybody's in sequence because we haven't changed it. But I want to resolve at home. Now, I want to, if we have a zero line and we do a touch a quarter and circulate and the girls run, we can do a right and left grand, right? Those of you who don't know say, yes, John, we can do that. Trust me, believe me, because that's a fact, Jack, and if you don't know that, then you need to learn it. So I want to start a right and left grand with my right-hand lady. But I want to be at home when I get done. Touch a quarter. Circulate. Girls run right and left grand. But on the third hand, do a do paso. Fourth hand, do paso. Excuse me, I gave you the wrong number. Fourth hand, do paso. And as far as I'm concerned, that's all I got to call, and I resolved at home. If you don't learn nothing else, learn a couple of these. Square, you may sit down. Nice hand for our square. We're going to use them more. The reason we put pennies on them is so you could see them real quickly. We're moving on. Deborah's next.
Thank you. There we go. Thank you. When I learned to call, one of the exercises that I was given was to start creating choreography, start writing choreography. And I did that, and I loved it. I loved pushing the dolls and loved writing this stuff, and I would take it back to my caller teacher, and he would look at it, and he would correct some body flow problems or something like that. And I was fortunate enough to get busy right away. But I hadn't had much opportunity to really move people around, move live dancers around. But I had material. I understood the basics of putting the calls together. And so when I started to call, I was a reading caller. Now, I don't know how many of you would admit to that or ever did any of that, but I did. I was a very good reading caller because I seem to be able to do, if you've got my little paper there, you see there's a little lizard on there, and that's what I called it. I could do a really good lizard. In other words, I could keep one eye on the dancers and one eye on my material, all right? And that meant that I was watching the timing, and I didn't lose my place with what I was doing. However, any of you who have ever used reading as a primary method of controlling your choreography know that it has pitfalls, such as skipping a line. And if you skip a line, you get to the element left. It's an incorrect resolution. What else? Yeah, the floor breaks down, but you ain't done. And you can't help them and get them home. And another thing that I discovered is, what if my material was too easy? It was all I had. What if my material was too hard? It was all I had. So I realized pretty quickly that I was limited by this system. And at that point in time, I hadn't been calling very long, and I learned to call in Southern California. We had outstanding callers there, all of us eager to help each other, and all of us new ones, desperate for any little bone that the guys would throw us to help us, and they rallied beautifully. And they said, Deborah, if you really want to make it, you've got to learn to sight call. Okay, somebody show me how. So I bribed a square of people to come over to my house and fed them, and they would show up if I did that. So we all got together, and a caller would come over, and I learned to sight call. Well, it's a little different doing it in your living room than it is going out at a dance and getting up there and being willing to try that. And my cards were still working for me, and I was writing new ones all the time. So what I decided to do, I knew I had to break it, but how do you do that? I thought, well, I think what I'll do is I'll do one tip a night where I sight. And then I can go back to what I know. I can go back to my tried and true, where I'm safe. And that's what I started to do. And I had to. Now, I'm absolutely positive that the first several times that I tried sight calling without my cards probably were not great. But I was able to find that corner. I could put them back together. And as time went on, I thought, okay, now it's time for 2 tips a night of sight. and then I'll put those cards away, and then I can go back to them. Pretty soon it was 3, and I thought, what do I need these for? And I was off and running. And I was using sight as my primary method of controlling the choreography. You notice how I stated that, because I really don't believe anybody is 100% sight caller. You can't tell me that you sight heads right and left through, star through, pass through. You know where that's going to take you. That's a module. That's a little piece of memory work, a little pattern, and you know where it's going to go. But really, for controlling my choreography and knowing what was going on with the floor, sight was my primary method. Cool. I'm like a sight caller. Like, cool. I have the new method, and I like to know what I'm doing. Well, those of you that use sight for your primary method, there are some drawbacks to that, and you probably have experienced them, such as, okay, your pilot squares implode, all 8 of them, if you can memorize that many, or maybe you only thought to look down at one, and that one square, for whatever reason, they're just not able to keep up. So let's say you have 10 squares. You pick one square as your pilot square, and they go down, and you can't resolve the other 90% of the floor that has done what you have asked them to do. And that's not fair to them. I thought, well, okay, that's not really working 100%, so, oh, anybody ever had this happen? The pilot square sees you look away, and they switch on you. On my little paper there, you'll see a set of handcuffs. I put those on there because I think those people should be immediately arrested if they do that, set the collar up like that. I've had that happen. That's embarrassing as well. I think what's most embarrassing is how long it took me to catch on to what they had done. That was what was really embarrassing to me. I also found that my material was becoming predictable. And I was getting bored. And if I'm getting bored, that means I am boring to dance to. So I thought, okay, now what do I do? Well, you know, that writing choreography, that was pretty cool. And I could really create some good stuff if I had the time to sit down and study. Move the dolls, think, you know, and write from there. So what I did was I went back to writing, but I wrote little patterns where I could take a little chunk of material. I knew the formation and arrangement I needed to start. I knew what I was going to end up with. And I didn't call those modules because I didn't know exactly what the relationship or sequence state was of the square when I started it. I didn't care. Remember, I'm a sight caller. I can always get them back to a corner. It didn't matter to me in the slightest. So I would do these little patterns. And that worked pretty well, too. But I still had times when I wasn't in control. For whatever reason, I'd be standing up there with egg on my face, and any of you have ever had that happen, know it just doesn't really feel well. And I've watched Jerry, and I've watched Randy call. And one of the things I've always envied is their amazing amount of control that they have. They're never lost. Every square in the front of the hall can still break down, and that square in the back corner that's still with them, they get them back to their corner. How do they do that? Now, Jerry was willing to share all of that information, but nobody could understand him. None of us knew what he was saying, and he was really eager to try to share this system, but we couldn't make heads or tails out of it. Now, I'm a very visual person, so when I'm calling, I have pictures in my mind that I'm looking for. And one of the things that was difficult for me to see, and there's a reason for it, is sequence. I always had a really tough time knowing immediately, are they in or out of sequence? And that's because the key person that I track is a woman. So that's the problem. The key person for sequence, because I would say to Jerry, how do you see sequence? Well, no, I just see it. I just know it. Well, that doesn't help me. You got to paint me a picture. I want to know what you see. And he said, well, you know, there's my primary guy and the secondary guy is to his left. And I'm thinking, no, not the way I see it, because there's my girl, and my primary guy is to her left, but the secondary guy is to the right. You see why I had problems with sequence? Okay, I had to do everything double. It's like dancing backwards and in high heels. All right, I was doing it, you know, whoa, but that's what I was hooked into, and I figured out how to check it, but it took me a long time. So when I started asking Jerry, what do you see with this system? How do you tell if they're in sequence or not? And at first he said, I don't know, I just know. Well, then he started asking himself, what do I see? So he began to go back and look at this system that he had been using for so many years, and that's why we had trouble understanding Jerry. It's not that he's inarticulate or he doesn't have the words to explain it, but it's like taking a 5-year-old and trying to talk to them about physics. Okay, if you're the professor and you're an adult and you've gone through this and used this for 100 years, and you try to explain it to a child, they're not going to be able to follow you for very long. So I kept telling Jerry, talk to me like I'm 3 years old. Okay, bring it down, bring it down, bring it down. And we were finally able to sort it out. And looking at this, Jerry has been able, and he'll show you how to spot sequence, how to tell if it's right hand, and you don't have to go, am I in sequence? Is that secondary guy to the left or to the right? You don't have to do that. He'll show you a much easier way to see it. Hallelujah. Thank you. And that's one of the exciting things for me that I've learned about CRaMS. Now, I don't go to a dance and use 100% CRaMS method. I'm doing what I did when I started to break away from reading. I'm trying to do like a half a tip to a tip a night of using CRaMS. Then I can go back to the old tried and true, knowing full well the risk I take by relying on sight as my primary method. And Tony Oxendine said something one time that really clicked a light for me with sight being your primary method of controlling the choreography. He said, if you do that, you are relying on the weakest link in the chain to hold you up. And that's the dancers. You need to have more control than that. And I hadn't thought about it like that. So I'm kind of a baby with this CRaMS stuff, but it's been very interesting to me to take this amazing system and break it down so, like I said at the beginning of my paper, even a blonde can understand it. Okay, even I can get this, and I can start to apply it where I am right now. I don't have to presto changeo, magically turn into a CRaMS caller overnight. I can stay with the system that I know and that I'm comfortable with and that has worked for me, even with its pitfalls, and gradually begin to increase my control. Now, if you are a primary sight caller, you don't really pay a whole heck of a lot of attention to relationship or sequence until when, guys? Until you resolve the square. Then you start looking for who's who matching up and this yada, yada, yada. And you fix it that way. And I thought, whoa, how cool would it be if I could use some really slick get-outs, but I didn't have to start with a sequence that was 500 calls long to take me from what I knew to where I wanted to go. Jerry can see this. He can see an opposite lady line in or out. He can see he's got mine, I got hers. Well, I can recognize partner very easily. I can recognize corner. And I'm getting to where I'm starting to spot that right-hand lady. But what I figured I could do with CRaMS, what it helped me to do, is I wanted to use a get-out square through 2, trade by right and left grand. And that's what I wanted to do. I thought that sounded kind of cool. Well, so I started at the right and left grand, and I pushed my checkers backwards. Any of you ever do that? Get an idea for a cool get-out? You gotta move them backwards until you find something you can see, that you can recognize. Well, what I saw that I needed was an opposite lady line, half sashayed, out of sequence. Oh, I can spot that right away. Not a chance, not a chance. But I knew how to get there. So I started with something I could see like this, 0 line. And I wrote a module that will take me there. Pass the ocean, I'll eat, circulate, recycle, veer left, bend the line, right and left through, half sachet. Ka-ching, there I am. And then I realized, I said to John the other day, you know, if I do that, pass the ocean and I'll eat, circulate, and girls run and bend the line, I'm there. And I had, you know what we do with sighting? We put so much extra junk in there to get us where we want to be. And I realized that with CRaMS, I didn't have to do all that extra junk. It flowed nice, that extra little module, and I can use that as I want to. But I thought, ooh, I can get there faster. Let's see, maybe I've moved them along enough, and I've got them in that 0 line. I want to use that get-out. I can get them there quick. Because I can't spot an opposite lady line out of sequence, half sashayed on the fly. I can't do that. But I know how to get them there, thanks to this method. And now I can start to use some really slick get-outs that I didn't even realize were available. And that's what CRaMS has begun to do for me. And when we came up with the name for this, we came up with, John, what did you want to call it? Choreographed resolution and performance? No, that's not going to work. Well, the C, we had choreographic for the C, we had crazy, we had cuckoo, and finally we decided, you know what this really boils down to is control. And how wonderful would it be for you guys to be able to go out at a national convention, at your state convention, at your club, and always know where everybody is at any given time, because you have that mastery over what you're doing. That to me that's the ultimate, that's the pinnacle. And that's what this system is about. So that's what my little paper talks about, is kind of my personal journey and some things that I did to start to apply this particular system.
Okay, thank you, Deborah. When we got started working on this, and Deborah and I would be traveling somewhere, going to a venue or whatever it might happen to be, she would say, track this with me, and she'd start calling in this type of thing, and then she'd tell me, I'm in the position where I can do this. And I said, no, I don't think so. And then we'd back up and we'd start all over and we'd do it again. Do it 2 or 3 times, and I finally asked her, I said, who are you tracking? She said, the #1 lady, and I said, good Lord, no wonder your calling's so screwed up, you know. Thinking, not necessarily her calling, but thinking was screwed up, you know. I didn't have any idea where the women were in a square, you know. I'm tracking the #1 man in my mind, you know. So we have had to learn to understand the language between the two of us. But you can't believe how much fun we have had helping each other, working these things out in our mind while we're driving in a car. Then we try to find something to write them down on right quick, you know, before we forget them. But it's been a lot of fun to do these things. So, and now, don't think that we're going to show you everything there is to know about CRaMS in an hour and a half. It ain't going to happen. If you want to really learn more about it, then come to our caller school at Pride over in October.
Thank you, John. If you look at my handout, I don't know if everybody got one, but I want to point out some specific paragraphs that are in my little handout. The very first paragraph was John and Deborah said, just put some stuff down on paper that tells you how you came across CRaMS. And the very first sentence there, I had no clue what CRaMS had to do with calling until 2 years ago. I remember my good friend Jerry Story telling me super get-outs ever since we've been teenagers. But the problem was his get-ins were as long as his get-outs, and I didn't have the memory capability that he had. Right then and there, I knew Jerry thought differently than everybody else. I knew that he thought different than everybody else because the very first time he came to Minnesota, it was like 30 below, and he was driving a diesel car with the diesel fuel, and he left it outside. We forgot to plug it in, and he said, what are we going to do? And I said, we'll have to go someplace where there's a heated garage. What he did was he started up a fire underneath his engine with my charcoal grill. I knew he was different. But anyway, I started working backwards from the stuff that he told me where I could figure out, oh, they were in a 0 line 10 calls ago, or they were in a 0 box 5 calls ago. And then I would just write down what I called snapshot resolution, where I took a picture of where I liked the get out that he did. Skipping down to the third paragraph, it's really combining several calling methods. Mental imagery, isolated site, burnt imagery, modules that you can't imagine. A lot of you have got thousands of modules in your computers or on paper, but you don't use them or you haven't memorized them. Modules are no good unless you got them memorized, gang. Thinking of a mental imagery method of calling, stick with me on this and see, you can tell me where we're at when we're done, okay? You're excluded. 4 ladies chain a quarter, heads promenade half, past the ocean, extend, hinge, leaders U-turn back, pass through, tag the line, face out, bend the line, pass through, wheel and deal, center sweep a quarter. Is that enough stuff? Where are we? Oh, we're in a squared up set. Everybody know that? So mental imagery is dancing in your head to get to those spots. And CRaMS is using mental imagery. A lot of it is. Isolated site. The next paragraph says about what CRaMS is. I didn't know it was controlled resolution and manipulation systems. I still, every time we talk about it, I have to go back to my paper to figure out what it is. But I started associating what Jerry was telling me on the phone in many conversations with the old Lloyd Littman. And I don't like to bring that up, but the very first 4 stations were things that I learned back in the 60s. The 1P, 2P line was everybody in a line with a partner in sequence. And the 1 and the 2 helped me out because I could see 1P, 2P. It helped me out knowing the sequence and the relationship. And that's what CRaMS emphasizes, gang. It emphasizes partner relationships and sequence. You never have to worry about the other stuff. It's insignificant. It's pairings, who you're paired up with, and sequence. If you keep those things straight, you're going to be able to call all night long and let the people do whatever they want to do because you're going to have control. Okay? So the 1C, 2C is now what is called a corner line. And the 1R, 2R is a right-hand lady line. And then the opposite lady line would be a 1020. So I used that and realized the 4 basic stations were things that I already knew. So let's talk about those 4 basic stations. To get to a 0 line now, just heads lead to the right and circle up 4, make a line. And you're there. That's the 0 line. How do I get to a corner line? Well, I could have the heads go into the middle, turn and face your corner. That's a 0 box, isn't it? I'm looking at my corner lady, so I simply do what? Star through or slide through. I'm in a corner line. Now, that's as simple as that. If I wanted to get there differently, what if I said 4 ladies chain, dance it mental imagery with me, 4 ladies chain 3/4, heads touch a quarter, walk and dodge, do a right and left through, veer to the left, bend the line. What do I got? Got a corner line. How do I get to the right-hand lady line? Or let's go to the opposite one first. That's really obvious. If I want to get to the opposite lady line, have the what? 4 ladies chain. I've got my opposite. Do my heads lead to the right, circle up 4, make a line. What do I got? I got my opposite lady. I'm in sequence. I'm in an opposite lady line in sequence. So the last one is the right-hand lady line. How do you get to the right-hand lady line? Well, how do I get my right-hand lady? 4 ladies chain. 4 ladies chain. My right-hand lady's over here, gang. 1/4. 4 ladies chain 1/4. I got her. Heads lead to the right, circle up 4, make a line, head gent break. I got my right-hand lady. I'm in a right-hand lady line. I know I'm in or out of sequence. I'm in. Those are the 4 basic stations. His other 4 basic stations that he's going to probably talk about are those same 4 that I just said, but with a half-size shape flavor. Or in or out of sequence. You got that, and you got all 16 stations. We don't want to worry about 16. We want to worry about 4. We're going to worry about the main 4. So let's get our square up quickly so it can help you see all of this, hopefully. Heads go into the middle, turn and face your corner, star through. What do I got? Corner line. Okay? In or out of sequence? In sequence. Past the ocean. What do I got? I got a corner in my hand, but I'm out of sequence, okay? So if I all 8 circulate, go twice, I still got my corner, okay? I'm still out of sequence. All right. If I all 8 circulate once, if I start with my corner and I'm doing an all 8 circulate, I know I got to meet a particular lady. It's got to be the right-hand lady. Do 1 circulate. She's there. I am out of sequence still, ain't I? Everybody hinge. Girl, you turn back. I still got my right-hand lady. Now I am out of sequence. Remember what John started with, and he went back to his memory thing, square through 4 hands and give a right to your partner, pull by. Well, I'm out of sequence. All I got to do is right and left through, do that. And then I'm in sequence, so now I know I'm ready to do my square through 4, give a right to my partner, pull by, or square through 4 and trade by. Or I can go back and maybe change that a little bit. Do a right and left through, we're back where we were. I know I got my right-hand lady, I'm out of sequence, correct? Okay. All 8 circulate. Yeah, you just pass through. Now turn and face your partner. Make an ocean wave. I still got my right-hand lady. Okay. Instead of circulating all 8, if I have my right-hand lady and I do an all 8 circulate, I'm going back to what? My corner. What if I just circulate one or the other, the ends or the centers? Watch what happens. Boys circulate. I'm in control. I got everybody with the partner. I could just say my get out was boys circulate, swing your girl, promenade home. Swinger, promenader. The problem is knowing where you're at, if you're in or out, and then having a module or a pattern to get out it and resolve the square. Sides go into the middle, face your corner, slide through. I'm in sequence, I'm with my corner. If you've been to caller schools, most of them will tell you we can do a right and left through and a slide through, and you're there for the resolve, right? You should have that in your head. Have other ones that are maybe a little more interesting. Square through 4. But on your 4th hand, Alaman left. Or you could just say square through 3, which is what most of us know, and then that's the corner. Have these little get-outs so you know where you're at all the time. Let's go to a right-hand lady line. We haven't talked and get them in sequence again. So the easiest way to get to a right-hand lady line, if I'm in a static square, is heads past the ocean, extend, hinge, girl, you turn back, there's my right-hand lady, and I'm out of sequence. I can figure that out because I look at number 1 man, I got to count counterclockwise around the ring or clockwise and figure out it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 right now. When I go counterclockwise, I got 1, 4, 3, 2. I want it to be 1, 2, 3, 4. So I know they're out of sequence, okay? Let's try this. Past the ocean. I'm with my right-hand lady, correct? I'm back into sequence. Everybody scoot back. If I got my corner lady and I'm holding on to her right hand and I got sequence, let's do an all 8 circulate. I know if I had my right-hand lady, I now have my corner. Who's the lady ahead of me? It's my original partner, isn't it? All I have to do is extend the tag and do a right and left grand. I just memorized another little get out. And look at this. They're at home. So depending on how you want to do it, Jerry's going to give you some that are not to a right and left grand, but to an all 8 circulate 1.5 where you're rotated. He can rotate them if he wants to, if he's at the end of the tip. He can end up with a slide through at home. He can end up to all kinds of wrong way grands. But it's all planned where you're at and what regional area you're in before you do the call. So start with the basic 4 and start memorizing a get out from each one of those 4 basic stations. Okay? We haven't talked about a get out for an opposite lady line. How do we get to an opposite lady line? One at a time. Somebody give me a suggestion. We did a 4 ladies chain. How about something a little more creative? Side star through. Don't do it. We're going to do it mental imagery here. No, I ain't going to do it. Sorry, Scott. No, I won't do it. Opposite lady line. Let's to make it easy again, just do this. Heads lead to the right, veer to the left, bend the line. I'm what? Out of sequence, but I've got my partner. Past the ocean. How do I get over to my opposite? All 8 circulate. Hinge, and the girl turn around. I'm in an opposite lady line. I'm back in my corner station, or what I call my corner quadrant, because I got my one guy down here where he's normally at. So I'm in an opposite setup. You got to have a get out for this. I know they're in sequence now, aren't they? Look at them in. 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. They're in sequence. My get out is from when they're out of sequence. So I know they have their opposite lady. Do a right and left through. Slide through. Here's my get out that I memorized back in I memorized this sequence back in 1967 or 68. And after I know if I'm in an opposite lady line out of sequence, I do this. I did a slide through, which I just did, and do an 8-chain 3. An X surprise to Alaman left. These are things that I've been calling since back in the 60s, and I now have been able to stir them around and come up with more modules and more get-outs because of this guy's inspired me to be a better caller. So these are just the 4 basic stations. If you start with those, you're going to have lots of success. You do some other types of methods of calling with the rubber band type of effect where you keep the people together. And I think, Jerry, you're going to go into that, right? So let's turn it over to Jerry's story. What?
Dancers may sit down, please. It was interesting. I guess it was just shortly over a year ago. Randy came by and spent the evening with us, Deborah and me. And when he got in the house and hadn't been in there very long, and he said, "What is this CRaMS stuff y'all are talking about?" So, I think I called it crap or something. Anyway. I said, "Well, wait just a minute. Let me go get a paper." So we went and got the paper that we had put together, and I gave it to him, and he read it, and he said, "I'll be darned." He said, "Now I'm beginning to understand what they're talking about." And it's reverting back. Some of you say, "This ain't nothing new." Don't sneer at us with that kind of a situation. Certainly it's not anything new. It was invented a long, long time ago in our square dance calling world. What we have done is taught everybody to forget about it. And that's what we're trying to do, is revive it back into a method that we can understand and that we can use and that we can teach other callers how to use. I guarantee you it'll help you calling. Jerry?
I think what everybody's been trying to say up here is that if you look at, especially by doing caller schools, it's the best barometer to see what we've got out there teaching new people and calling for our clubs. And if we can take sight calling and turn it back to the way it's supposed to be, 10% of our repertoire instead of 90%. And in most cases, what we see today, most callers are running off of 90% sight calling, 10% all the other stuff. That's what we're trying to switch around. Sight calling was never, ever invented or meant to be 90% of our show. Anybody that says, "I'm a sight caller only," is lying. Or they're ignorant. They don't know. Because you can't be just a sight caller only. You've got modules. You just don't realize it, I think. All right? So if you can look at it, what CRaMS is a box. All right? Now, in that box, for most callers today, is one tool, sight calling. What we're trying to do is put all the other methods back into the box. Like John said, it's nothing new. It's just over the time has evolved. We've taken them out of the box. Modules has fallen to the wayside. We don't use our brains for memory work as much anymore. We read off of our computers. Maybe the word lazy fits for some of us. I don't know. But there's more to being a competent square dance caller than knowing how to sight call. And that's what we're hoping that CRaMS will do for us in the caller schools, and what you can help us do as you go home and work with new callers, or if you're interested in getting more competent yourself and feeling like you want to try something new. And please understand that we're not trying to change the way you call. What we're trying to do is add things to your repertoire. Don't change what you do. If you find yourself sight calling too much and you want to dive into this, please feel free to contact any of us and talk to us on email. We're willing to share our knowledge and our time with you. And don't ever think that you would be bothering me or Randy or John or Deborah or anybody else. Please get in touch with us. Let's get our square back up, and let's just go through a few of the things. I'm going to expand on what all three of these talented people have showed you so far. The first part of CRaMS, as you'll read in the paper that I wrote, the first part of CRaMS is, and think of this when you read it, as if you were trying to teach other callers to do CRaMS. You don't want to start right off and teach them too much. You want to, the very first thing you want to teach them is you have to memorize the 4 primary stations, all right? So we teach them to go to them primary stations and resolve the square and bring them back. Now, they can do that a tip or two every dance that they do, and eventually, after they've done this enough, they're going to see those 4 primary stations while they're calling. But until we train callers to recognize, and this is the new word that we want to coin, and we'd ask all of you to start using this word more and more and more in lieu of the word sight. We would prefer to call this recognized calling, not sight calling. Sight is just we use for resolution, and that's what it was meant for. Was 10% of our program would be sight resolution, but just a sight call, we're really doing modules. But now we want you to understand where you're at. After every call that we call, the dancers are always in one of the 4 stations, always, no matter what you call, and we'll show you that in just a little bit. But before we do that, I want to do some sequence stuff for you, that so we can maybe help you out just a little bit by not having to look at the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go to our right hand lady. Let's have the head star through, pass through, and star through. All right. The second part of CRaMS shows us how to decrease our dependency on sight calling. In other words, we're going to use these other methods. We're going to start putting things back in to our toolbox. All right? We're going to put back in isolated sight. And we're going to put back in memory work. And we're going to put back in mental image. We're going to put back in the rubber band method. We're going to put back in all of the things that we all have heard of before, but we shy away from. So we can dance around using all the other methods that we have at our disposal and not interrupt the right-hand lady station that we have now. If here's the rule. If you do something and you lose her, well, go get her back. Don't take off and do something that would take 2 people across the square. That's advanced CRaMS. Because once you take that lady across the square, or a man, 2 men across the square, then that would change to another one of the 4 primary stations. Okay? So we're just going to keep it intact. And it's amazing how much stuff you can do and not really lose the person. Pass through. Wheel and deal. Still got her. No big deal. Double pass through. Centers in. Cast off 3/4. Oops, I lost her, didn't I? Oh, my goodness. Star through. What happened? I got her back. Double pass through. First couple left, next couple right. Okay, it's time to resolve. I like short sequences. Because my idea is I've only got 3 or 4 or 5 minutes to call a nice hash tip. I don't want to just do sight calling like we see, and they go on and on and on and on, and they end up resolving about 2 times in a 6 or 7 minute tip. That's not good, is it? Because the enjoyment for the dancers is what? Element left. They want to do that a bunch of times. So I figure, boy, the more the merrier. You know, so short sequences, get them in, get them out, get them in, get them out is great. Now, I'm not going to sit here after I've danced around. I know I still got my right-hand lady, correct? What I'm not sure of is what? Sequence, okay? So we've danced them all around. We're not sure of sequence. Now, how I tell if this is for a right-hand lady station only. If the ends are facing each other, their partner, if the ends are facing their partner, I know that they are in. Right and left through, please. If I see this, and what's the coined word that we're going to use? If I recognize that the paired people in a right-hand lady station are in the center looking at each other, I know they're. And this is the quick way. I don't think I could check numbers, especially if they're not going to have them on at a dance. This is really, I think that's a hard way to check sequence. This is an easy way. I can see one of these sides has, and if I can notice these guys are partners, but these guys aren't, then I know it's a mirror image, all right? So once I recognize this, I know that I am out of sequence. So if I'm out of sequence, and I know that the get out that John used and Randy used was a what? A square through 4 right to the partner puller by. That was what? Well, if it's out of sequence, I don't have to, I could do it right and left through and then do that. Or, why don't I just square through 2? Square through 2, right to the partner puller by. All of that had, how much sight calling was there? A little bit to control the flow of the choreography is about it. Just to control, I'm sight calling. I guess you'd call it sight calling. I call it recognized calling. I'm just making sure that I don't use the same hand twice. I'm making sure that it flows good. Those are the kind of things that I like to teach callers to do and to worry about while they're calling. Now callers worry about pairing somebody up and getting my primary with my secondary and yada, 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 and move them around and on and on and on. If we can free callers up from those handcuffs and get them to spend that time while they're calling, worrying more about the smoothness of the dance and the choreography. This is how we will eventually put the dance back in square dancing. Sight callings has helped us take the dance out of square dancing. Let's have the head step into the center and turn and face your corner. All right. Let's say that we've danced them all around. Star through for me. All right, we've danced them all around the place, and we bring them back to a corner line. And a get out that we might know is a circulate 1.5 to your partner, and then there's all kinds of things you can do. Well, we know that we got to set that up in an in-sequence situation. So if we're done dancing now, we've danced them around, we've used all the methods, we've used modules, we've used the rubber band method to keep them together and not lose them, we've used some equivalents and zeros, and we've used all the things, the tools that we're putting back in the box. Let's go for a get out. Right and left through. Past the ocean. Okay, I'm back into what? Nice corner wave. Circulate 1.5. Meet your partner, box the nat. Right and left grand. Okay? Now, let's say that I didn't want to do the right and left grand. You know, today's dancing, we do a lot of at-home resolutions. Probably because we do too many right and left grands, people get bored doing them. So a lot of times we accommodate the dancers by just, you're home. And the dancers like that, especially the higher the levels, the more they enjoy not doing so many right and left grands. So to do that, can anybody tell me what we'd have to do to accomplish that feat? Rotate the square half, right? Yeah? Head step in, pair off, face your corner. Step to a wave. All right, circulate twice. All right. We have rotated it half right now. So if you want to disguise it a little bit, what we want to do is when we're taking callers through this system, we also want to teach them that it's a very important factor to theme your tips. Not just theme your tips, but theme every sequence. So let's say the theme for this sequence was cross run. All right? Just this little chunk of the tip, the theme would be cross run. Swing through. Girls cross run. Get between the boys. Girls run around the boys, bend the line, pass the ocean. And I would have done that before I circulated them twice. So I've worked them in this quadrant. I took them over there and I did my theme over there. To me, that's enough. I'm ready to resolve so I can go on to another one. Get them in, get them out, get them in, get them out. Circulate 1.5. Meet your partner, slide through. And you're home. All right? Moving on. Let's do another theme. Let's say that you were at a workshop and you wanted to pick a theme for a call. And let's say that we decided on scoop back 1.5. That would be a good workshop for anybody. Anytime you fractionalize a call is probably a good workshop. Let's just pick that as our theme and then let's run through that and just do one CRaMS section. This is just one section of one tip. All right? Head square through 2. Touch a quarter. All right, we're going to start to insert the theme. Now, realize that I've probably already walked them through it, okay? Or we've called it a couple times, and I've told them, you know, how the scoot back 1.5 works. I expect all of you we'll have no problem with it, okay? Scoop back once and a half. Girls, it's a right touch a quarter for you. Don't forget. Pick up a boy. Bend the line and reverse flutter. All right. Who you got with you? Right-hand lady. All right. Let's go on to another quadrant then, right? We just themed it in one quadrant. You don't have to do it 3 times. Once is enough. Pass through. Tag the line. Face out. Bend the line. We got a what? A new quadrant to work in? Yep. Slide through. Touch a quarter. Let's go on with our theme. Scoop back once and a half. Girls, don't forget, it's a right touch a quarter for you. Pick up that boy. Bend the line. Reverse the flutter. Who do we have back? Good. Pass through. Wheel and deal. Centers wheel around. What have I done? I've went to another one more. Now, what the reason for this is because it gives the dancers the feeling of dancing all the way around the square. Instead of spinning them around for 5 minutes in one box, we did 10 seconds here and 10 seconds here and 10 seconds here, and then we're gonna do it one more time and resolve. Touch a quarter. Scoot back once and a half. Girls, I'm not going to tell you this time it's a right touch a quarter, okay? Why not? Bend the line. Okay, it's get out time. We've done a beautiful tip. This is just a beautiful CRaMS tip. Now what we got to do? Check sequence. How do we check it? We're in a right-hand lady station. What did I just tell you? If you're in sequence, how do you tell? The ends are the ones it's facing. Think of it this way. If the centers were facing, do a right and left through for me, please. All right. If the centers were facing here, this would be nothing more than finishing a chicken plucker. Yeah? We all know what a chicken plucker is. You could star through, pass through, trade by. Finish your chicken plucker and you're out of there. Or we could go back to the great get-outs that we've all been using all day. Before I did the right and left through, it would have had to have been a square through. Now it would be a square through. Yep. Square through 2. Right to the partner, puller by. Element left your corner. And you notice that we're halfway around the square, right? Because we recognize that. So we could do a right and left grand here, or we could box the net and do a wrong way grand, box the net. Do a wrong way grand. And we know that we're going to end up at home. Slide through and celebrate. All right? How much sight calling did I do? Very, very limited. I used it to control my choreography, to control the flow of my choreography, make sure it flowed smooth, danced good, and I made sure that they won. And that's the most important thing, that the dancers win. When they win, we win, right?
Jerry?
Yes.
Can you tell also how you move from quadrant to quadrant doing invert rotate to everybody? So maybe some of those that are not familiar with that?
Run by that again, you mean?
The invert rotate. What is the simplest way where you change insides to outsides, outsides to insides, that kind of thing, and not changing?
Okay, well, like that time I used tag the line for my invert and rotate. All right? A lot of times you can invert them this way. Head step into the center, turn and face your corner. All right? Swing through. Now I want you to notice that in an ocean wave, when you've got 2 people paired, now I would still consider this, even though everybody doesn't have their corner, I would consider this still a primary, or it'd be a secondary corner station to me. Boys trade. This is boys run, bend the line. This is a primary corner station. Why is it primary? Everybody has their, okay, past the ocean. Swing through. Now, all of the components are still there. Nothing has changed. So I'm still considering this a corner station. However, I don't consider it primary, because they all don't have their corner. But all the components are there, you see. Now, this is a very powerful tool because you can invert them from here and pair up the different people. I want you to watch because it's just kind of like magic. Notice the 2 that are paired and the 2 that are unpaired. If you do a circulate from here, it changes nothing as far as the choreographic value is concerned. But as far as the dancers are concerned, my goodness, they paired up somebody right away, and they don't know. It looks like a whole different deal to them. But we know we didn't do anything. It's still going to be a corner station when we're all said and done with it. All circulate. Now, do you see how it unpaired 2 and paired the other ones? That's an invert, all right? And the other, we use invert and rotate as star through, pass through, bend the line. See, it does the same thing, only that rotated them as well. All right? Square your sets real quick. Let's think of another get out that we can use. How about something? You know, somebody said to me in Germany, you know, they like to call really tough stuff over there. They do. You know, DBD is from the get-go over there, and in Japan as well. These callers really don't move the dancers on up to the next program until they've experienced the fun of doing things from a little bit different way. That's a different ideal than what we have here in America, and that's okay. But one of the guys said to me after we presented CRaMS, and they're very astute, and they worked on it. The caller came up to me and he said, "I'm having trouble. I really am starting to understand this, but I feel like my hands are tied a little bit. I don't feel like I can call quite as hard and difficult as I did." And my answer to him was, "Have you thought about theming? Theme your tips more." And he said, "No, I never thought about that." And then after he started theming, he come back and he said, that was great. He said, "Now, you know, but I'm having trouble now because when I take somebody across the square, immediately I lose it and I start sight calling again." Well, that's advanced CRaMS. And once you have studied this and you've memorized your 4 quadrants, your 4 stations, then after you've done that enough, you'll be able to see those stations on the fly. If you do a call, you're going to look and you're going to say, "Well, we just went from this station to this station and vice versa." But we're going to save that for another day because it gets a little bit complex at that point. All right? Let's just do a couple things. If we wanted to say the get out was circulate 1.5 to a right and left grand, how would we set that up? I know it's a right-hand lady station. Head star through, pass through, step to a wave, girls trade, and swing through. I think that's it. All circulate 1.5. Grand right and left. Okay? So, knowing that we did a right-left grand, the same theory comes back to play. If we wanted to end at home somehow, we would do what first? We would stir the bucket half. Rotate the square halfway. Sides right and left through. And the heads square through 4. There's a right-hand lady, isn't it? Okay, and we've stirred them halfway. Step to a wave, girls trade. Swing through. Circulate 1.25. That's not once yet. 1.25. And then quarter in. And celebrate. All right? I don't care. I like it. If I like it, I'm going to do it. All right? It's the same thing, same place, ain't it? Don't know if I can remember it or not. Same place, I think. Let's have the sides right and left through. And the heads step in and pair off. And I think that the ladies need to chain. Go ahead and just chain the ladies. We can get there any old way we want to. I'm just getting there quickly. Now, put centers in. I think it's the same thing, isn't it? No, I can't remember. I didn't write that one down. I don't remember it right now. Anyway, square your sets. We'll go on. I didn't have that one ready. I know what you're talking about, but I didn't write it down.
One of the things that I have no problem recognizing is a setup that I refer to as my line. I own my line. I can spot it, I can engineer it, and I know exactly where I'm going when I get my line. Now what I mean by my line is I have facing lines. The couple on the left end is paired. The couple on the right end is not paired. So in other words, if I call pass through wheel and deal, the centers are going to have to square through 3 to an element left. That's what I call my line. So if heads, would you pair off for me, please? I just want to show you something. Swing through. Boys run. Bend the line. I've got my line. It's my line. And to me, this is a corner station. Okay? I'm looking linear. I see corner station. Jerry said, "This is a right-hand lady setup." I said, "What? What do you mean right-hand lady? Corner." He said, "Deborah, look across. Who are they looking at?" There she is. But I didn't think looking across. I only was thinking of my line, which runs linear. So that get out that Jerry just used, I can use it from here. Past the ocean, swing through, all 8 circulate once and a half, grand right and left, or whatever you want to do from there. Okay. Oh, were you out of sequence? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, gosh.
You just forgot a right and left through is all.
Okay, I missed the
You're
right
all
and
right.
left through. All right. So my line I could recognize with the right and left through past the ocean. So if you have something that you own, a station that you absolutely own, you can be boxed in by only seeing one particular relationship. If you're only thinking linear, you're going to miss the fact that you have another setup, another relationship happening directly across. And that was one of the things that Jerry pointed out to me that opened a door for me. Butch, I think, has a question for you.
Which one? The one I did?
Question on the mic.
You want Deborah to repeat? Is that what you said, Butch?
The whole thing? Oh, okay. All right.
I'm going to do that again right now.
Okay, go ahead, Jerry.
Okay. I want to do that. That's exactly where I'm headed. Okay? All right. Head star through. Pass through. Slide through. Right and left through. Now, we've got an in-sequence right-hand lady line. Yes? Everybody agree with that? Okay? No problem with that? Chain the ladies, please. Now, we still have a right-hand lady station. All the components are here, but we wouldn't call it a primary right-hand lady station. I would call it my secondary right-hand lady station. Now, Butch, look linear. Look here. Corner. So I know where I'm at. If I want to play with my right-hand people, I'll play here. If I want to play with my corner, I'll go over there and get them. Pass through. Wheel and deal. Centers wheel around, and I know I'm at my corner. You follow me? Swing through. Boy run around a girl. Bend the line. I know I'm in a corner station here. Okay? Look linear. Right-hand lady, depending on who you want to play with. You know where they're at. Pass through. Wheel and deal. I don't want to play with my corner anymore. I want to play with my right-hand lady. Centers wheel around. Hot dog. All right. Do an 8-chain 4. Let's get back where we were. All right. Swing through. Boy run around a girl. I would consider this right here a secondary right-hand lady station. All right. Bend the line. Right and left through. Now, this is a line that Deborah was just referring to as my line, because the corner is in this line, and that she looks linear. And there's nothing wrong with looking linear. What we're trying to do is get you to look both ways. Look linear and look in front of you. It's different. Now, if we chain the ladies, then it's the same for everybody, you see. Chain the ladies across. Now, everybody is in a primary or a right-hand lady station, okay? When we chain the ladies, you're going to get 2 stations out of it. Chain the ladies. And this is a powerful, powerful station right here. There's a zillion get-outs from here. This is what I refer to if I was talking to John Marshall. And I said, John Marshall, we're going to start in the Dixie Grand line. John Marshall would know exactly what I was talking about. It's where we'd pass through wheel and deal to a Dixie Grand. And that's just caller terminology. But if I said to anybody up here, Randy, we're in a Dixie Grand line, he'd say, okay, know where you're at. Let's go. There's just all kinds of get-outs from here. It's a great place to push your checkers around. So if you ever get home, you want to practice a little bit, go to this station right here, and there's a ton of them. Touch a quarter. Circulate once and a half. Girls trade and then do a U-turn back. Alaman left. Okay? The heads past the ocean. Extend. Swing through. Boy run. Couples trade. Bend the line. We're right back in this Dixie Grand station, yeah? Okay. Let's see what else we got. Pass through. Wheel and deal. Now we know that we can do a Dixie Grand here. If you don't know that, write it down, because this is where you do a Dixie Grand to an Alaman left. Okay. Or you could do a double pass through. Peel off. Pass through with a 3/4 tag. Find your partner. Grand right and left. There's just zoodles of get-outs from this place. We're going to do about 3 or 4 more of them right there. And there's, I mean, I'm just doing a part of them. There's absolutely tons of get-outs. It's the best station that I know of. I like the other ones. Opposite lady, there's some few good ones. Corner, of course, there's all kinds of them because, you know, we all got corners, 0 boxes and 0 lines. We've mastered that. You're already on your way to doing CRaMS. You just own a couple of stations. You see, I want you to own all of them.
Jerry, memorize these that he's giving you. He's not citing it. He's going to memorize. And you have to memorize if you're going to do some CRaMS.
Scott?
When we were in that formation before, and you were saying one way it's one way, one the other, it's kind of like dice. It's the flip side. One side is your right hand. The other side is your corner. Right. So it's like the opposite side of a dice.
Same in the same respect. Just make me a line of 4, any old way you want. Okay, 0 line, yeah, and it's a primary partner line, yeah. Chain the ladies. Okay, now look here, still a partner, but it's not a primary partner, is it? I would call this a secondary partner. Look linear, and you know right away that it's mirror image cattywampus. So if you look linear, it would have to be a what? Opposite. It's so cool. This is things that we just never really thought about.
And that's thinking outside the square. That's thinking out, you know, I was limited by only looking in one direction. And this just really popped a lot of things open for me.
Let's go back to the right-hand lady station just a little bit. Heads past the ocean. Extend. Swing through. Boy run. Girls don't bend the line. Right and left through. Okay, we're back to our Dixie Grand setup. Now let's say we want to, you know, people like the exotic get-outs. And you can get as exotic as your mind can handle. I mean, you can go as far as you want with this thing. And I'll give you some examples. Pass through. Wheel and deal. All right. Now, we know if we did a Dixie Grand here, we can Allemande left. What if the centers were half sashayed? Footprints are still the same. I really didn't change anything. How would we half sashay the centers? Let's see. Let's do this. Let's have the centers square through, and on your third hand, box the net. What did I just do? I did all that to accomplish a half sashay. Dancers don't know that, and it was just kind of fun. All right. So we still have the corner behind. Corner behind is still a Dixie Grand setup, but we've half sashayed them. Dixie Grand, right, left, right, with the same sex, Allemande left. Back to your partner for a mixed-up grand. Some are going right and some are going wrong. When you meet your partner, all 8 spin the top. Turn right, center star, the ends circulate. When you meet your partner, the heads slide through, the sides face in, and everybody celebrate. So you can get as creative as you want to with this stuff. It's just how far and how much time that you want to spend with it. And if you're happy with sight calling, please don't change. If you're successful with sight calling, please don't change. If you are looking for something else in your choreography, practice it. Do 1 tip a night. Study it a little bit. If you have questions, call us. We just love to help you. And we hope you enjoyed this session. We've got some time for questions and answers.
Yeah, we ain't done yet.
For 10 minutes, and I think John's going to finish it up with some question and answers. Thank you, and we hope you enjoyed that.
Thank you, Jerry. I'm trying to think before the square sits down. There are times that I'll have some kind of a brainstorm, and I'll call Jerry, and by the time I have told him what it is, he turns right around and gives me 3 other ways to do it. Good. I've never seen a brain that thinks the way he does in square dance choreography, because he's tracking everything that I'm telling him as I'm going along, and he sees several different things with it. But that circulate once and a half, I think I remember it. My brain is not working like it ought to be, but sides do a right and a left through. Let's try this and see if it's going to work, and then do a half sashay, and the heads slide through and roll twice, and do this is plus here for just a moment, and do a centers in. Now, what we have, brain finally told us that doing an all 8 circulate from an inverted line is almost exactly like an all 8 circulate from an ocean wave. I said almost. It looks different, and it looks different to the dancers, And I remember I gave Dana one of these one night, and the next time I was up and dancing to him, he called it. He said, "Guess where I learned that?" You know, that dance pretty good. So what Jerry said just a moment ago was all eight circulating just a little bit more, and Randy asked if that was proper, and Jerry said he didn't care. But yeah, and I remember I gave Dana one of these one night, and the next time I was up and dancing to him, he called it. He said, "Guess where I learned that?" You know, that dance pretty good. So what Jerry said just a moment ago was all eight circulating just a little bit more, and Randy asked if that was proper, and Jerry said he didn't care. But yeah, in English language, it's okay. If we were overseas, might not get by with it, but we'd be somewhere pretty darn close. All eight circulate once and a little bit more and face in, and you ought to be home. And so you can add that to your repertoire of all eight circulates from inverted lines, and it winds up being just darn near the same thing from ocean ways if you got that to work out some of your programs and things that you might want to do. Okay, dancers, thank you. Give a hand to the dancers. They've done a really good job, and thank you very much. Okay, do we have any questions from anybody? Now, again, we say some of you are going to say, this is old hand. If you've been calling for a long time, you may remember what you used to know. Are you using it? And have you shared it with everybody? Somebody says, well, I've got some really neat get-outs too. Share them. Use them. Pass it around. Let's help get callers in control instead of so darn much freewheel calling. Scott?
My question is, when you get into the realm of challenge level dancing, and you're getting into formations like block formations or galaxies or phantom formations, when you're talking lines and boxes here, but when you're talking about those formations,
wait,
right?
Jerry, microphone. Let me say this before Jerry comments. I have watched him call programs from limited basics, the ABC program that they've been working on, or the less than the basic program that I have seen him call from that program all the way through C1 using this method of calling and his system of calling that he uses, and I've never seen him look at a note yet. No paper.
What I would do if I had a galaxy, for example. Now you can't decipher right there in a galaxy what station you're in. But if the boys had the box and the girls had the big diamond, I could have the boys squeeze and the girls phantom galaxy circulate, bend the line, boom. Now I see right there, but I recognize why, because I've got those 4 primary stations memorized. So as quickly as I can get them to 4 people together, I can sort things out in an instant, and then I know I have got memorized get-outs from all of those stations. So the nice thing about this is a sight caller would have to go all the way back to a corner box or a 0 line to do their resolution, which I think is just a big waste of time. When wherever they're at, wherever they stop, and 9 times out of 10, I don't even go to set up anything. I just let things happen naturally. Wherever they're at, unless I just happen to end up there 4 or 5 times in a row, then I'd go to another station so I could do some get-outs over there. 9 times out of 10, if you don't worry about that, wherever they stop, you should be able to do a get-out from there. And in the course of an evening, you're going to go through all this. There's only 4 places, and you're going to have get-outs memorized, so you're going to utilize it. If you don't for some reason, then intentionally you go to that station and set it up so you can work your get-outs, you see.
Elmer Sheffield. I got a question for you, I guess, John. When you did that little thing you just did with the inverted line, and you said circulate once and a little bit more, if you were calling a dance, you know, and you wanted to do that, or I guess what I'm asking is, did you have to start that from a certain place and put them there so you knew they were there, or could you see that could you have already called 2 or 3 other sequences, and all of a sudden could you have seen that setup and had them do the all 8 circulate once and a little more and you're home or whatever?
I could have seen it in another quadrant as well, Elmer, and know that it's not going to end up at home position. So if I see that and my brain wanted to go that, then I would engineer it back to where I wanted it to be. I would force myself to engineer it back. Yes, I could see it because it's a very simple station to see once you see it with your checkers or with dancers or whatever. But it would not necessarily resolve back at home, which I wanted it to at that particular point. But if I wanted to resolve it to a right and a left grand, yeah, you could do it from any quadrant of the square. It wouldn't make any difference. Does that make sense? And since Elmer asked that question, I can remember when, right after Elmer started learning to call, he came to a week-long thing that we were doing at Fontana Dam, and he said, I want to learn to sight call. So Harry Lackey and I spent a lot of time, and we got, John Saunders was there, we finally had to make him hush. But Harry Lackey and I spent a lot of time with Elmer teaching him how to sight call. Sometimes I regret teaching you all that stuff, Elmer. You know, we taught you how to not think for these kinds of things, which are so neat and so good and so fantastic to use and great for the dancers. Question?
I was just Gene Baker from Charlotte. When you're calling a dance and you got about 50 squares out there on the floor, is this sequence of what we're talking about now, is it easier to do this than to sight call?
This system, I was thinking about that a while ago. Those of us that go to the National Convention and you call and you got a whole bunch of squares on the floor, I saw a situation one time where there were 5 professional callers on the stage calling, and every one of them were sight calling, and darn near every one of them were calling the same thing over and over and over again, because we were all relying on sight calling and watching 1 or 2 squares out there on the floor and gearing them through the same, almost the same stuff. And we had not nearly enough variety. With this system of calling, and I've smiled to myself several times since I've really learned how to do it, to walk up and pick up a microphone and never look at a pilot square and know exactly where I'm going and where I'm going to end. It's all memory work. It's memorizing modules, but I don't memorize them all in the same sequence or the same order. They're short situations. Like Jerry said, short sequences. Get in and get out of it and go to something else. Also, please don't forget the alley man left. Many callers are resolving to home or resolving to a right and a left grand. Back when we had note services, and there were 4 of them in the note service business, and I told them, I said, we need to make a motion to eliminate out of the basic program alley man left, right and left grand, and promenade. And they all said, we can't do that. We've had them too long. And I said, check your note services. Everything you're publishing has eliminated those calls. And so they went back. I am not convinced that dancers are tired of doing alley man left, right and left grand, a swing, and a promenade. Those that can dance really well. I know in the advanced and challenge programs, you go into a whole bunch of stuff and you do a lot of other stuff. But the mainstream and plus dancers are not tired of doing that yet. We had a question somewhere? Yeah. Yes, sir.
Frank Holland from here, from Mooresville, North Carolina. I have a comment first. Swing is one of my favorite calls. It's one of the biggest reasons I stuck with square dancing. When I realized I was going to get to swing all the good-looking women in the square, it was a big impetus to keep me in the activity for the last 30 years. But my question is, I got in here just about 5 minutes after the last handout was passed out, apparently. I was wondering if there's any way we can get any more copies of it. Yeah?
Let us know. Let us know which one you don't have, and whoever is the author. Pardon, you didn't get any? All right, make sure we get your, anybody that didn't get it, make sure we get your address. And do you have email? We can fire it to you on email real quick, or the home office can get it to you one way or another. Get us your name and address and information, we'll get it to you.
John Elmer, Sheffield again. I have one more question. When you said to begin with we weren't going to learn all this stuff while we're here today, and so far I haven't. I got a little bit of it. But I guess, and probably a lot of people sitting here thinking the same thing, they just don't want to say it. But it would be easy for most of us that have called for a while to call to that square that was up there because they had numbers on their back. But how about when you go into the hall to call your dance, and you may know a few people, you may not know anybody, but are you Jerry and you are you keeping up with this in your head when you say, okay, we're going to a right-hand lady line, or we're going to an opposite lady line? Can you keep up with all 4 ladies in the square? I mean, I know you know who somebody's partner is, but how do you? That's why I'm asking. How do you know when we get to this situation?
That's the secret to the whole thing right there, Elmer. Once you can figure that out and understand that, then you don't have to keep up with all of them.
Remember what we said. We're using the tools that we already know. Isolated sight. If you take them directly to your right-hand lady, then you get take a mental picture of those 2 people. All right? Just keep those 2 people together. Make sure you don't send 2 across the square like what a spin chain through, or in a diamond the wave would swing through. So that takes 2 people over, then that's going to switch. If you don't do things like that, there's all kinds of stuff you can call using isolated sight. Don't let them go. Dance them all over the place. Know that when you're done, you're still going to be where you started, either in or out of sequence, and then check your sequence by who's facing each other, and you're home free. So just 2 people, isolated sight, and then use your equivalents and your zeros or anything to maneuver the dancers around the dance floor. Manipulate them. That's what we like to do.
And Elmer, what for me, like if I can recognize, say I walk in to call for your club and I've never met any of these people before, I can pair up partners and corners pretty quick. And I can see that. I can recognize that right away. And then I've got a little module that if I really want to get brave and take them over to a right-hand lady, I'm not going to recognize that as I'm just freewheeling. I have to plan that out by starting with something that I recognize and know that if I do this module, it's going to take me over there. And then I'm watching them like a hawk so that I keep them together and do my get-out kind of quick. And the more you do it for your own groups, the more that you will begin to recognize, especially that elusive right-hand lady. But one of the things that we do at the caller schools when we work on CRaMS is hold up cards like this where we ask you to engineer a Dixie Grand line. Can you engineer yourself into a Dixie Grand line? Can you engineer a right-hand lady line? And depending upon which one we cover up, that's what we're looking for, in or out of sequence. Corner line, can you do that? You can make these cards for yourself, have them on your table, and if you feel like, gee, I feel like I'm kind of in a rut, flip one over and say, can I engineer an opposite lady line in or out of sequence? See if you can take yourself there. After the school was over this last time when we worked so hard on CRaMS for the whole school because it was an experienced school, some of the callers that were there came up and held up this card for Jerry and wanted to see him try to engineer the extroverted parallelogram, which doesn't even exist. And then they also held up one, 5 - 3 trapezoid to see if he could make that one. So they wanted to see just how far this CRaMS thing would go.
Elmer, stay with me here and follow what I'm thinking, okay? Heads past the ocean, extend, and who do I have? And so what does every other guy have? Right-hand lady. So everybody's got right-hand lady. All 8 circulate. Now I have what? See, that's what you're scared about.
Once you start seeing that who's in the opposite position from your partner? Opposite lady.
So who's in the opposite position of the right-hand lady?
Your right-hand lady.
It's your corner.
Corner.
All right. So now I'm in a ocean wave in my corner, but I'm out of sequence. Watch what I'm going to do now. Hinge, and the girl run. I'm now half-size shade, out of sequence. I've got to get out for all that.
Now,
for all of these 8 stations.
Who you got for a partner?
Right.
You got corner.
No, I got corner. And I got to memorize sequence that I do when I know that. If I want to, I'm over here in this quadrant, but let's say I don't want to be over in this quadrant because I passed the ocean and extend, put me there. I did an all 8 circulate. I came to this spot, and I got my corner lady. What if I don't want her to be there for my get out? Because my get out, I want to be at home. So let's erase all I've done. Have the heads go into the middle, face the corner, star through. I'm in a corner line, ain't I? I want to be in a half-size shade corner line out of sequence. Pass through, U-turn back. My get out is, it's a real cool one. square through 2, and a right or left grand. Now, I could have done that over here, I could have done it over there, but I know that because I'm over here, when I meet my partner, I'm what? I'm at home position. So not only do you know who you have, you know where you're at in the area of the square, geographically. And it's not that I'm dancing at all mental imagery up here. It's just, it's the geometry behind it. Now, maybe it was because I had a math background and had, you know, I got a D in geometry when I was in high school, but I ended up teaching algebra and geometry when I became a teacher. So I wasn't really good at math, but you can keep track of that. I guarantee you, just a little practice.
Is it making any sense at all, Elmer? All right. What it is going from a known situation to another known situation without forgetting it.
Fred Martin from Virginia. Is this CRaMS very similar to J. King or Don Beck's system?
No, it's not. It incorporates a little bit of all of it, but not. It's similar in a way, but not exactly. It takes part of it. And like we said, it's a bit of memory, mental image, and sight. It involves it all. And it's not that difficult. Once the light turns on, it's just like being a sight caller. How long does it take you to learn to be a sight caller? You know, you sight call, you call and you call and you call, and then all at once the light turns on and said, "Oh my God, I can see it now." It's the same thing with this. It don't happen overnight. Or don't try to learn all 4 stations in 15 minutes. You learn one station at a time, one step at a time. I know we're running a little past time, but apparently y'all ain't in a hurry to go eat anyway, so you have to stand in line or wait. So we'll quit here in just a second.
Would you suggest when you're learning this?
What's your name?
Oh, Bob Ask from
Thank
Illinois. When you suggest when you learn this stuff, would you say like go work your corner lady line and then go from there, work that for a while, get familiar with that, and then move on to the right-hand lady line, work that and get familiar with that, and then go on to the next one, opposite lady, and then keep on going that way, and then, okay.
One little piece at a time,
cool.
Bob.
All right,
one little piece at a time. Now, as an example of this, I worked with a caller, one of the very best callers over in Europe, and I'm not going to call a name, and he was at our caller school over in Germany the first year, and with the very most experienced group over there, and I was working with them, and I was using flashcards, and he had set up a really neat get-out with opposite lady, line, out of sequence, half sashade. He did a pass the ocean and all that circulate to a right and a left grand, which was a neat get-out. Then he was still calling, and I'm flashing the cards. He was doing great, man. He knew everything. There ain't nothing here. And I flashed a right-hand lady get-out, or right-hand lady line, I think it was. And he stopped and he said, "I don't have any idea." He had called a little bit, and then all at once he said, "I have no idea." At that particular point, everybody was with corner. And I said, "Who've they got right now?" He knew, corner. And I said, "Use your module get-out that you used just a moment ago." And he had the funniest look on his face, and he said, "Are you kidding me?" That's not the exact word he said, but he said, "Are you kidding me?" And I said, "Do what I told you to. Don't argue with me." He used his get-out. He said, "All they circulate." And I said, "Stop as soon as you get there." I said, "Now you've automatically got the right-hand lady. Can't be anybody else, because you go from corner lady to the opposite person from there, and you got right-hand lady. It can't be anybody else in symmetric choreography. You go asymmetric, you got a flipping mess anyway. You better have it memorized, or you're going to be in deep trouble." We hope we've given you something to think about or something to look at. Maybe someday you'll have the opportunity to pick this guy's brain over here, and because we do it all the time. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks a lot, John. Great session.